This is a Viva PR podcast.
What I really want to make is an impact. That's 300,000 people more than watching BBC Breakfast. In the end, we've taken from being a commentator to the BBC wanting her to have her own podcast with the BBC. You don't get a badge if you mention a brand 5, 6, 7 times in an interview. You naturally have a better chance of landing that voice into the media.
Welcome to PR in the Real World, the podcast that looks at strategies, challenges and stories that are shaping our PR world. And that's one with a Lancashire lens, not London. In this episode, we're joined by Phil Caplin, founder of Broadcast Revolution, one of the UK's leading broadcast consultancies. Phil takes us behind the scenes of broadcast media, sharing expert tips on everything from landing impactful TV and radio coverage to understanding just where the audiences are shifting these days in a world of upstarts like Times Radio, GB News and, hey, heard I mention it, podcasts. So whether you're a seasoned PR pro or just looking to elevate your broadcast strategy, this episode is packed with practical insights, insider secrets and advice that will help your campaigns land. So let's crack on. Over to you then. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got into this world?
The answer is I fell into the world of PR and comms. My first 2.5 years of life was merchandising and buying. I was in fashion for House of Fraser, which I'm sure nobody really is that interested in hearing about. But I fell into it, is the truth, 25 years ago. My boss at the time, scared me to death in the interview. And I just got excited at the prospect of getting involved in radio and TV in any way. 19 odd years on, 20 years on, Broadcast Revolution was founded. And from the majority of that time, I was trying to decide when would be the right time to do it. Lots of people always talk to me about setting up an agency from a very, very young age. And I always put obstacles in my way, if I'm being brutally honest. But at the heart of why I'm still here 25 years on is that love for broadcast, love for radio and TV, the love for brands. I'm blessed because I get to work across so many different industries: consumer PR, corporate PR, public affairs, healthcare, tech, etc. Is varied because at the heart of what I'm doing, it's broadcast. And so I think that ability to have such a varied day, we all say that. I'm sure you'd tell me the same, quite rightly. But I would suggest that my day's even more varied, shall I put it? And just that variety has really kept my attention every day for 25 years. And I think I've still got the same love, enthusiasm for what I do today as I did 25 years ago when I joined a company called EMR, which I would like to think for a lot of people listening is too far back.
So when did you make the leap? You mentioned a few barriers that you put in your own head that were in your way. What were the trigger points? What did you set out to try and achieve with Broadcast Revolution? In
2016, I moved and set up a broadcast division within the Chime Group, which had VCP and good relations, PR agency. And I got asked to set up a broadcast division, which was super exciting. I created a division there and built that up for 3 years. And really, it was, in hindsight, a practice run for me for doing my own thing. But it was only Christmas of 2018 when the penny finally dropped. And it's one of those phrases, isn't it? When the penny drops, it just did. It was a nothing moment. But it was that moment where I went, I could do this myself. I should do this myself. I'm certainly getting no younger. So in July 2019, Broadcast Revolution was founded on July 4th, Independence Day. Me, myself, my computer and my contact book, and off we went.
I nearly got founded on April Fool's Day, but I managed to avoid that. So how big is the consultancy now?
Yeah, we're 17 people. We've got our office in central London, literally opposite the BBC, new broadcasting house, which is lovely. It's an inspiring view. It's really nice to walk past multiple times in a day, look out a new broadcasting house where people would say the number one news comes from. And it's brilliant. So we've got 70 people here in London. We've got a couple of studios and the usual flexi working in this modern day society. That's across both our broadcast side and also our studio side where we're creating podcasts like this and video content for clients, providing that integrated broadcast solution, which again, I think is something that a lot of people don't join the dots to all the time.
Tell us about the services that you provide. What problems do you solve for people?
Well, I think if you asked a lot of PRs, they'd say the following, and it's not a clever answer, but just that we're a specialist, as I've already touched on. All we know is broadcast. Don't ask me how to get in the Sun or the Mail or anything like that. All we know is broadcast. And we've got a team that every day are talking to broadcasters. And I know it sounds daft, but PR agencies, clients, they're not talking to broadcasters every day. So you will talk to a client and they'll say, yeah, I've got really good contact at the BBC, or I've got really good contact at ITV. It's like, great, brilliant. But I'm doing it on a large scale. I know 500 stations in the UK. I know thousands of people. When I say I, the business, of course, not myself. And therefore that puts us in a position of expertise to help other people. And so that's why agencies like ourselves exist, to support both clients directly, but of course, PR agencies, to understand how broadcast can work best. And what's amazing, I find 25 years on, is that the biggest challenge is still getting people to understand the power of broadcast. It's amazing. It really is. Like today, and I know I've just, by saying that, timestamped something, but when we've recorded this today, the latest Radar figures came out. Now, for those who don't understand, Radar is the organization that monitor how many people listen to radio stations. For TV, it's Barb. And as an example, you've got 1.4 million people listening to Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Now, to give that context, that's 300,000 people more than watching BBC Breakfast, or maybe 500,000 more watching GMB on TV. Now, we can have a conversation about which is a better piece of coverage, the TV, the radio, etc. And we can all go through that conversation. But a big listenership. I'll tell you the headline that still astounds me, and it's going up and up and up. For a long time, it had been controversial to talk about GB News. I disagree, but we don't have to have a political conversation about that. They're just a broadcaster. And I would never want to put my clients on specific shows where you could specifically have problems. So there are many shows that are ex-Sky News people running Sky News-esque programming. What most people don't know is that GB News, the TV show, also put that feed out as a radio station. So as an example, Times Radio have just over 500,000 listeners. As of today, GB News's news radio feed, which is just TV being played out on radio, has 660,000 people.
Wow.
So nearly as many people listen to a radio station that most people don't even know exists as watching GMB.
That's fascinating. And it's really interesting what you said about GB News, without going into the politics there. All the kind of broadsheet and tabloid newspapers have their own kind of political stance. And occasionally that comes into conversation with clients, but probably not as much as you get involved in that conversation if you dare to suggest that GB News might be an appropriate channel.
Yeah, listen, we have the odd conversation now. When it first launched, there were lots of conversations. It was new, there were problems. Now, every now and again, somebody would say they'd rather not. But, without having the debate with someone, it begs the question, why? Everybody has a political stance, as in newspapers, radio stations, TV outlets. GB News is no different. The individuals involved, I totally accept. Who wants to be on a show with certain people?
Yeah.
We don't need to name. And some of them not even on there. But fascinating. 660,000 people are listening to them on radio. And TV-wise, it's about 150,000, which is about on par with Sky News.
It's fascinating what you're saying, that people don't really kind of truly understand broadcasting and its power. And yet it's not a new phenomenon. It's been around for a while. And in the interim, since you started your career and I did, lots of other channels, social media has been born and the iPhone's been born and all of this has come around and podcasting's come about and so on. And yet we still don't get broadcast.
Well, the amazing thing is, and I know we're talking very generally speaking, but if you were to say to clients, what pieces of coverage would you like? Most would immediately think TV, quite rightly. And I get it. Like, I totally get it. But actually, the place where you will get the most reach and impact would be the Today Breakfast, 5 Live Breakfast, Nick Ferrari at breakfast, and Jeremy Vine on Radio 2 at lunchtime. They're the biggest outlets. It's amazing. If you want to hit people, don't be on TV at breakfast. And yet, all my clients just want to be on TV at breakfast. And I get it. Like, that's an argument I'm happy to avoid having because we all get it. We want to be on BBC Breakfast and G&B and This Morning. But viewer-wise, radio and listening-wise, radio is bigger.
How important is this idea of educating the client to you? How long do you have to spend explaining this kind of thing to the client or to the PR agency in our case?
For me, it's really important. And again, as an old boy in the industry, I've had many conversations. And so for me, it's about why. Like, why do you want to use broadcast? What do you want to achieve? And they're really simple and basic questions that you and I will sit, nod, agree on. But not many people come with answers to that question. So I would much prefer a client come to me and say, I want to be on This Morning because I like Ben Shepherd and Kat Healy, and I think our audience watch it.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. That's cool. Like, there's some rationale to that.
Yeah.
But, the client that comes to you trying to reach a 18 to 25 audience wants to be on all the BBC networks who target a 50 odd plus audience. There's no sense to it.
No.
Again, I know the reasons why they think that's success, but it's not success. You need to talk to your actual audience, not the audience that you think you want to talk to. And so understanding where your listeners are, where your audience is, and try and map that out and map out what does success look like. My industry has been weighed down with this volume thing. I want hundreds of pieces of coverage. But what does that mean? And it's the same, it's the same with print and online for sure. But like, what does it mean about getting volume of coverage? What I really want to make is an impact. So is anybody looking at the impact it makes? Are we driving traffic to a website? Are we driving sales? Is our C-suite hearing us? The amount of times we will get told through marketing directors, comms directors, PR managers that their FD heard an interview on Times Radio and told the CEO, now it's been taught. That's amazing. But that's impact.
Yes.
But those PR people are getting praised for that, for one interview. And so quality coverage is so important. Quality coverage that can make an impact is really important. And deciding what is success is so important.
You made me think then, I had an old boss who used to talk in the old PR world before social media came along, that he used to describe what you just described of that non-planned approach as being all about egos and politics, either an individual's ego or the corporation or company politics. That doesn't help us, does it, as a service, if that's what we're going for. And likewise, in the social media world, if you're going after metrics that don't mean anything, the vanity metrics, as we like to call them, it is all about getting to that impact level, isn't it?
And one of my biggest frustrations is that there aren't enough checks and balances. I had meetings recently with a couple of other sort of agency owners, and they're telling me how they've done radio days. What a terrible phrase a radio day is. I ask any client, does that mean we don't have to get you coverage on TV? Oh, no, we'd love that. Well, stop talking about radio days. These are phrases from the past.
Yes.
Okay. Can we do a campaign 9 till 1 on a specific day? No. Like, let's get coverage for you, however it comes about. And that might not be in such a structured way. And the pound is so valuable. You know that. I know that. And whether you're asking your client, I'm asking you for your client, that pound's so valuable. And so if you look at the campaign that you've created, I've created, we've created. We go, what's it going to do? Is it going to reach who we want to reach? No. Is it going to deliver the message we want to deliver? No. Why do it? Why spend pounds? Either your pound, my pound, their pound, somebody's pound. And then one thing that we use a bit is third-party voices, celebrities in some part. Again, I was with an agency boss last week telling me about how they spent 10, 15 grand on a celebrity that I'm not sure has been on TV for 10 years and wasn't famous then, but they weren't a celebrity then. It was reality TV. And I said, did they get much coverage? No. So why did you do it? And it sounds ridiculous when two adult, sensible men talk about this.
Yeah.
But for me, these questions need to happen more often. That will save agencies and clients a pound. And let's do it better.
Yeah.
And just so we're clear, that's what I pride myself on and my business on, which is to be able to have that consultancy say, no, that's not good enough. Let me go away and try and do it better. And if I can't do it better, let's save the pound and let's do something another time.
Yeah.
And I'm not scared of that.
What's the recipe for a successful broadcast pitch?
Yeah. So if you take what we're saying, again, one of the bad habits of my world is clients come to you late. So I would say, let's say an average turnaround time is 3-4 weeks. But some people are turning around, asking you to turn stuff around in a matter of days. But the good clients are ones that get you involved right at the beginning. Right at the beginning could be when they're pitching for business, when they're pitching their annual 2025 plans. Get us across stuff early. Let us input into that could be good, that might not work. Let us work this up. So the earlier the broadcast, I say we, but people are thinking about broadcast early, the better. At the point then that you've got a good plan, sourcing the right assets, like B-roll, video content, like research, like third-party voices, celebrities, experts, whatever it might be, case studies, you've got time to build this. Because in the end, what you're trying to get to towards the end is hitting a forward planning desk. Now, forward planning, ideally you want a week, 10 days out. But again, depending on your story, you could forward plan something a month, 3 months out. You want to be on the one show and you've got a really good story with the right assets. Talk to them 3 months out. Like they'll talk to you.
Yeah.
Well, that's brilliant. But you can't do that with 3 days selling. Like you're hoping they've not put a TV program together in 3 days' time. It's not working. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so giving yourself time to do this is really, really important, especially for broadcast. I'm not saying some of the lessons I'm trying to share don't work for other parts of PR, but specific broadcast, it always feels very last minute.
Your team there, a lot of them come from those kind of broadcast careers. They come armed with that insider knowledge, don't they?
Yeah, we've got a mixture of PR and broadcast consultants. So, I've got people here from the BBC with over 20 years experience from national Radio 5 Live, Radio 4, producing there. I've got deputy editor of Global Radio. She still is on Global Radio. So she still dips in because isn't it great that I've got somebody that still is a journalist and works for me full time. So that's amazing. So yes, we have that mixture of journalist plus broadcast PR expertise. And again, the team are not only dealing with stories and brainstorming ideas and crafting all these assets, but they're also speaking to the media as well. And that means that they know what works and what doesn't work. They're not one cog, they are the whole part of the engine room. And that therefore allows clients to understand much better what does work, what doesn't work.
That's brilliant. How much has the industry changed over the years? And has it changed even in the time that Broadcast Revolution's been around?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you take the media side, there's loads of changes that have gone on in the last 5 years. We've talked about GB News, Times Radio, we've talked about Talk TV, Talk Radio. There's all the cuts that the BBC have had to make and continue to make. So some of the shows, evening shows, nighttime shows, now you're getting one show across a whole network or across multiple stations. So on the one hand, Problem, there are less opportunities for us PRs. Opportunity. If you land the opportunity, you're getting multiple times worth of reach because you're across not one station, but many stations. And that goes through the Greatest Hits network, goes through Hearts and Capital. A lot of shows within these stations are shared content across a network, breakfast especially. And so, there are lots of cutbacks. There are issues. And that's where it becomes harder for PRs to land broadcast, which again is an opportunity for Broadcast Revolution, yes. So I always believe there are times where PRs can do a selling themselves.
We're obviously doing this for a podcast. One of the changes that we've all witnessed over the years has been the growth of podcasts.
Yeah.
How has that changed things for you guys? Did you instantly believe that it would become the kind of beast it has become, or has that changed over the years?
I think it's a really interesting area, and I think we are still a way away from seeing where this subject ends up. As an example, if you listen to Radio 4, they've got 3 podcasts at the moment. It's a little set called Sliced Bread, Toast, and Dough. I don't know if you listen to any of them.
Yeah.
But for those who don't, Sliced Bread is how did the idea happen? So it looks at companies and the ideas and like it's as easy as sliced bread. And this is a podcast show about that. And then you've got Toast. Where did it all go wrong? And how did they come back from where it all went wrong when it was Toast? And then Dough, the money behind the projects and the brands and the businesses and how that all works. So first of all, I love the branding. Second of all, these are shows on Radio 4, the radio output, but they're also then taken as separate entities of podcasts. That is modern day radio. And more you'll see this. Again, maybe just because it's front of mind, Times Radio. They have a number of podcasts. If they don't continue to grow, are they going to look at it and go, well, we've got so many good podcasts. Do we need a radio output? I suggest they do. I think Times Radio is a great station, but they're a commercial entity. So I think the interesting thing is yes, they're taking all this content, creating podcasts. But of course, how many people are listening individually to said podcast? And that's where you're in a whole different conversation.
How do you get figures for podcasts? Because you've talked about radio for the existing commercial and BBC broadcasters.
We have certain tools that we use, and they're as accurate as the information put in there by people. As in not Broadcast Revolution, but the database system that we work with. I think it's hard at the moment. I think the numbers are at times can be quite small. There are some obvious big podcasts that will have good reaches, but a lot of the podcasts you listen to are small. But if that small number are engaged and absolutely perfect target audience, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
we'll stop. So I think, like anything, is having a full communication mix where you've got your print and your online and your radio, your TV and your podcast and your and so on and so forth. It's not one or the other. But where will podcasts be in 10 years' time? Great question.
What's your crystal ball look like? What do you think is going to happen? Not just in that podcast world. Where is the world going, do you think?
I just sense radio will be much more these episodes and series of podcasts. Again, listen to most shows and they'll tell you if you've missed it on demand, listen to us, tune in. So you don't have to tune into Chris Evans' breakfast in the morning. You can just listen to him in the gym later on the podcast. But that's great engagement for his show or his sponsors and any brands that might be mentioned within there.
And that's the kind of same approach. I can't remember the last time I watched TV live, as it were. It's the same.
And more so, on the one hand, you've got something like Sky News that its barb figures are very small. They're modest, 100, 200,000, which always surprises me. But how many people are watching Sky News on YouTube? How many people are watching Sky News on TikTok and so on and so forth? How many are watching it online? Well, that's not monitored by TV viewing figures, because that's digital. And so, again, something that we certainly are looking to explore is to show you the whole reach you're reaching through all your different broadcasters as to the different avenues that they're producing. Because it's not just a piece of audio or a piece of video. It's being used through social channels and other places, where broadcast is today in 2024 that it wasn't 25 years ago.
That's really interesting. If you could share with me some tips and tricks of the trade, I won't tell anyone. This will just stay between you and I. Some things that we could keep front of mind if we're pulling together our next PR plan that includes broadcast.
Listen, I think for TV, think about pictures, images. Again, this is not rocket science, what I'm saying, but it's really important. You know, some stories, some brands, some clients have really good visuals. You might be a car company. You might be a air fryer company. You might be a travel company. You know, pictures can really help you. Likewise, if you're not naturally in that situation, how can you create them? How can you make your pictures more visual? Who's going to sit on a sofa? What sort of people sit on that sofa? Do I have people like that? And from a story point of view, is this going to be interesting? Is this sort of content that you see on these outlets? Because for as much as broadcast is a bit of a mass market medium, like we all watch it, we all listen to it. And yes, obviously some stations and outlets, they all have specific demographics that are tailored more to them. At the heart of it, they're all very different. So as an example, if you have, you know, a top celebrity, whoever that might be, you look at ITV Daytime, GMB, Lorraine, This Morning, Loose Women. On the one hand, you might think, well, I want to be on all of them. But although they're produced separate, at the heart of it, they are one morning ITV programming. Therefore, that one celeb is only going to get picked up by one of the four. So again, just thinking about it sensibly, where do these people sit is really, really important. If you're going to talk to people in Leeds, I say that as a Yorkshireman, you know, what's the relevance for BBC Radio Leeds as to this content? Is it the voice? Is it the data? Is it the insights? If you haven't got anything, why do you think people in Leeds care about your product, your story, your message?
It's called Radio Leeds for a reason.
Absolutely. Likewise, you know, you can have something really strong for Leeds, but nowhere else. Well, grab that piece of coverage while you can.
Yeah.
And that's where broadcast isn't about big spikes in activity. It should be always on for a client, for a brand. Where can broadcast work?
One thing I've noticed over the years, in the dim and distant past, a voice like mine, an accent like mine, should I say, would rarely be heard on the airways or on TV. These days, everybody's welcome, I guess. Are there kind of thoughts around diversity and inclusion that you should bring to the piece as well?
Yeah, massive. We were talking earlier. The BBC have their 50-50 charter. Most broadcasters now have a 50-50 charter source. We don't have a charter, but we follow the same rules. So we monitor and track all our spokespeople and make sure that we are providing a diverse offering of voices. And interestingly, we actually skew the other way. We have less middle-aged white men that we're offering up, which is great. But then it's not diverse, is it?
Explain to myself and listeners, what's the 50-50 charter all about?
It's about making sure it was set up originally around having 50% voices female, 50% voices male. But likewise, it's about BAME voices and disabled people, LGBTQ, like a whole raft. And so if you have voices that are diverse, then you naturally have a better chance of landing that voice into the media, because people are specifically looking. You know, in the Today program say we need an economist to talk about emerging markets in Brazil, India, and Turkey. Yeah. I go, great, we've got someone. It's like, yeah, they have to be female, okay, and not from London, right? Because to your point, accents are important. Yeah. Accents are more than welcomed nowadays on a national scale. So these things are really, really important. So again, if you are a middle-aged white man, it doesn't mean you've got no chance of getting coverage. But unfortunately, in today's society, it's harder. It's better if you're female, or BAME or disabled, etc., because they are specifically looking for diverse voices.
That's a really interesting way the industry's changed, and that will really help inform our thinking. Are there any other kind of aspects of the job that you take for granted that we probably would be a penny drop moment?
One of the words we haven't touched on that I think is really important with broadcast is flexibility.
Right.
So again, go back to some of my pet peeves as a man that's done it for a long time around, let's do a radio day on the 28th of November between 9 and 1 type thing. Having flexibility, whoever you are, is important. And I mean that in the sense of being able to follow the news agenda. Look at the news agenda for the last God knows how many years. Really volatile. And broadcast especially gets the brunt of it. Ask Ian King, he's pulled off air more times than not at the moment because of big news announcements on Sky News. And so to be flexible, to be able to say, oh, the government have got a big announcement next week or tomorrow, maybe we should move this. Or at the moment, all people are talking about is somebody from One Direction dying or something. That can have a really big impact if you're looking at floor to ceiling, wall to wall media output. I keep looking to my left because we've got 8 screens of different TV news going on, because we want to be across it. We want to see what people are talking about right now. And so flexibility is important in the sense of when you do it.
Yeah.
But also, my example of that 9 to 1, what about the station that wants to do a pre-record the day before? What about the station that can't fit you in 9 to 1, but will do it 2 days later? Because for them, that's okay. They don't care about your campaigns on the Thursday. They'll do it on the Friday or the Saturday or the Sunday.
Yeah.
And so flexibility around your campaign, around your spokespeople, is super, super important. And likewise, another thing we do a lot of is reacting to the news agenda. So a story breaks and we've got brands that can comment on that news. On the one hand, it's great that we've got people that want to be that commentator on different things, but you have to be able to react quickly, because broadcasters aren't waiting for PRs to media train, brief, prep, get their approval. It's like, if you're not on air in the next hour, it's done. And so there's an art to that, to being broadcast ready. Again, which is something we spend a lot of time with our clients, helping brands get their spokespeople broadcast ready. Because again, you talk about how broadcast has changed. Since COVID, there's this wonderful line in sand of COVID, but there are some realities. We're doing a recording on Zoom. If we were at the BBC back in the day, everything had to be done on ISDN.
Yeah.
ISDN aren't even being created anymore. You can't get an ISDN line. Nobody will sell you one. These are archaic. And so being able to do an interview from your phone, from your laptop, from your tablet, on Zoom, on FaceTime, on Skype, this is the norm. If you listen to Andrew Neil, lunchtime on Times Radio, he's doing it from his house in the south of France, and it's not on the best line. And you notice it because it's not on a clear line, but they don't care. And he's creating a great show for an hour.
Yeah.
You'd never have heard that 4 or 5 years ago. So in that sense, it's changed, but it's good for those spokespeople who need to just jump out of a meeting, jump onto their computer, 5 minutes later, they've done their interview, they're back in their meeting. Easy,
but you mentioned one word there before about training, and I guess that's again something else you guys are really well known for. Before we kind of wrap this up, because I know you've got a busy schedule, just tell us some top line tips from the guy who knows. What do you need to do from a media training perspective? What are the key takeouts after a training session?
As I asked you before, is this being filmed?
Yeah.
So I don't jump up and down and get all animated, because again, I would spend time with clients, and clients would come into the studio in a suit and tie, and I'd say, make yourself at home. Take your tie off, take your jacket off. This is radio. But nowadays, a lot, not all, but a lot of stations, you're being filmed for social purposes, like we are today. And so, yes, how you look's important. The background you have is important. People walking in and barging in on you. There's been enough brilliant YouTube videos of this. These are all really important to understand and to make sure you're prepared for.
I'm laughing because the cleaner's due any second, so vacuum in hand.
Find out what her broadcast diet is. That'd be great. And so that's really that's super important. Flexibility. On the one hand, we're talking about it's easy to do things remotely, but if you want to be on BBC Breakfast, you've got to get up to Manchester. That gives you your best chance. If you want to be on Ian King, again, will he go to Osterley and sit in his studio? Because this will give you more chance to do that. When you're doing those interviews, make sure you A, answer the question, and B, the art of bridging from the question that you're being asked to the answers that you want to give. Not as a politician avoiding the question, but making sure that you're able to answer the questions given to you, but also still stay on message for yourself and why you want to be there. And probably one of the big things nowadays, again, I think more so than ever, is as a brand, and when I say as a brand, if you're a third-party expert representing a brand, respect branding, because you don't get a badge if you mention a brand 5, 6, 7 times in an interview. Probably Broadcast Revolution will get a call and a filthy email having a go at us for a bad spokesperson. It doesn't help anybody. Spokespeople, what you're really looking for, spokespeople to be called back time and time again. We work with a great lady who was providing retail advice to consumers. And in the end, we've taken from being a commentator to the BBC wanting her to have her own podcast with the BBC. Why? Because she's not providing lots of branding. She's providing really good advice. That's how you create good voices for broadcast. Let's focus on the content.
That is a fantastic place to wrap this up. There's so much to unpack just in that last section. That's another podcast in its own right, or a mini series on training. But I think on that point about content being king, I think we should wrap things up there. Phil, it's been a pleasure. Superb. Thank you for that.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Thanks for listening to PR in the Real World. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could subscribe to the podcast and leave us a quick review. Your support really helps spread the word and reach more marketing and PR professionals just like you. And don't forget to share this podcast with your colleagues or anyone who'd benefit from the insights we share. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for more tips, strategies and real world stories from the PR frontline.